Hello. Hi. Friday, 5 p.m. Thank you for staying. Last session is always a hard session. I hope you enjoyed the conference, the 2 days of the conference, and also the workshops, if you took part of any workshops. I'm really humbled and glad to be with you for the first update conference. This is actually my first time in Czech Republic and in Prague. I always wanted to visit Prague, so finally I'm here and I'm so glad to be here. Right, let's start with the introductions. I would like you, if you don't mind, to introduce yourselves to me before I do introduce myself to you. How many in the room are developers? Oh, wow. Okay. How many are creating maybe tools or software, SDKs, APIs, any product that is to be used by other developers? Oh, okay. Half almost. Right. Oh, my turn, right? Okay. So I'm a software engineer. I work mainly on Microsoft technology. So I write C# code. I worked as a full-time developer on WPF applications. I worked on just a tiny little bit of Windows 8, and I also worked on Xamarin. I worked on the Nokia Music app. It was called Mix Radio, so that's when I did the bit of mobile Xamarin. And then I moved. I wanted to change my job, and I moved. Currently, I work with a company called Nexmo. We are, wait, let me fix that, okay. We are based in London. So Nexmo is a telecommunication API company. We make APIs like SMS, voice, authentication, or in-app messaging, or in-app voice. And I work specifically with the developer relations team. We are called developer advocates. Do you know what is the job of a developer advocate? Awesome, because I'll have to explain it now. So this is my team. As you can see, we are not having fun at all. And apparently we've been doing very well. We've been winning a few things. So we won during the DevRelCon conference in London. We won the best developer relations program, so, which makes me a award-winning developer advocate. It's just a joke. I'm like, no. So let's go back a bit in time to when I decided to move to the next job. So I like developing, and I take a lot of pride in being a software engineer, but I knew that I didn't want to be, you know, a 9-to-5 full-time developer. I wanted to do something more than that. And I wanted a job where I can combine all the things I like. You know what they say, do like a job you like and you will never work, or something like that. Anyway, so I like technology, I like writing code, but also I like communicating what I do. I like being in conferences, whether attending or speaking. I like writing blog posts. So I wanted that part of the job. And I do love traveling. And that's when I thought, I'm going to move to the job where I can travel the world, be in conferences, and still write software, right? Brilliant. And I am doing that. So I wanted to see how many conferences I did this year. I think I did around 20 conferences, 7 countries, and maybe 16 cities. But there was a trick in there. Apparently, that wasn't my job. My boss has another idea about my job. So this is my boss, Phil, and Phil always keeps saying, but Bibi, our job is to serve the community. And he is right. My job as a developer advocate is to be a bridge between the developers who are using our APIs and our product. So when developers come to use our product, I need to show them how to use it. And if problems happen, I need to show them solutions. And even like more, I need to show them how to exit and find solution, right? So in order to best serve my community, I needed to understand what my community wants. What do developers want? It's simple. We are humans, right? We just want to be happy. Whether you are working on your project as a side project, as a hobby, because you want to learn, you want to do something, or whether it is a project in production that you are doing for your day-to-day job, you just want to do the job, achieve your goal, and get on with your life, right? And why should the happiness of other developers matter for me? They say happy developers are chatty developers. So if you have a happy developer using your product, they will stick with your product, they won't change it, they will also go to their boss and say, this is very good and we need this, and I do want you to spend some money on that. And they will be talking about it. So they will be your advocates. They will be your voice to more people to use the product. And that's when we talk about a good developer experience. We offer a good developer experience. Now, if you are not aware with the term developer experience, it's very similar to UX, user experience. The only difference is developer experience when you have your product is SDKs, APIs, and your user is a developer. So the developer experience follows a lot of the values of user experience, but we add and we need to follow standards, and we keep an eye on new technologies because our users are developers. So what makes a great developer experience? This is all in my own opinion, so these are my ideas, and it's what I've learned through a year and a half doing this job and trying to communicate with developers. So feel free to give me your feedback and to disagree with me. Right. So before we play the game of Would You Rather, could I please ask you, what do you think this code does? Yeah? Send an SMS? Don't be shy, tell me. Right, and how did you know it sends an SMS? I guess because you can read it, right? Right. So this is the first step. It sounds very trivial. It sounds that we all know this, but to make developers who are coming to use your APIs or even your tools, to make their mission easier, to let them just focus on solving their problem, the first thing is to make their life easier, to use good practices when writing your code, like naming. Use the right names. If I am using the Nexmo APIs for the first time, the chances are I want to send an SMS, and also if I go to the GitHub repo and try to find the code, I would be able to understand that that's what I need, just because it's written in clear words for me. Okay, so now, would you rather write this or this? These two methods, they do the same thing, and I did test them. They both just send an SMS from any C# application you have. Right? And this is I picked a very easy sample to put in here. If I was to use the voice APIs, it would be hundreds of lines of code to do all the HTTP requests and to generate all the JSON tokens. The other thing is, to make developers' life easy, they just want to solve a problem. They don't need to worry about too many things around your product. So offer them client libraries, for example, because that would make their lives easy. They need to send an SMS. The way it is done, they don't need to worry about it. To send an SMS, we need to do requests and then talk to the carriers, and I don't even know how we do that. Like the part where we are talking to each carrier, EE or, O2 or whatever. I don't know how it's done, and I don't need to know. I just need to know how to send an SMS. You don't really need to know about all these requests. And the other thing is, the chances are, if you are using APIs in your project, you won't just be using them for one go. It's not like, oh, I'm going to send SMS and that's it. Probably you have a bigger scenario where you will be using more than just one methods from the APIs. So take all the repetitive tasks from the developers. All these requests, HTTP requests, all these authentications against the API with credentials and stuff, because they will be done every single time. So take all these repetitive tasks from the developers and just let them focus on the problem they want to solve. How many of us wanted to try a new technology or even a new tool, a new framework for the first time, and we couldn't go past the installation, the setup? And how many of us did give up? I did. I definitely did give up. I'm like, oh, whatever. And this is really important because this is like that the first time. This is the first time the developers are using your product. We talk about retention. This is we're gonna either attract them or lose them. Because if the very first step is hard, they don't want to waste their time. They would just move on to another product, probably. Let's face it, it's not like there is always another product to use. They would just move on and find something else that would make their lives easier. So also, how we configure things is really important. So we had this. We didn't get things right the first time. With the APIs for the C# client library, what we used to do is we used to have an app config with all the API credentials for people to use. And that caused plenty of problems. If you go to the GitHub and look at the issues, all the issues are about that. Oh, where should I put that? Is it in my web config? Oh, but I don't have a web config in my project. I'm creating a console project because you don't know who's using your product. They could be experienced developers, but they could be also beginners. So the moment we decided to completely ditch this and give them an easier solution, which is just create a client, an XMO client, an instance-based client, and you can use it, that took lots of problems for us. So not only that made our clients, our developers, happy and able to use and move on with using the APIs, but also it made my life easier because I don't have to answer all the same issue literally multiple times. And I could focus on other things. And it's not just like the APIs or SDKs. Also tools. If you are working on a tool, think about how would you make things easier for developers? How would you give them enough freedom to use that tool? It could be the UI of your tool. It could be the functionalities. Like with Visual Studio, every day they are introducing something new. And IntelliSense makes developers' life easier. code snippets makes our lives easier. So think about all that. So basically, developers want just to focus on solving a specific problem. If they go to your product, it's because they have a goal in mind, a problem in mind that they need to solve, and they don't need to work on anything around it. They just want to solve this problem. Another way to make their lives easier to focus on that problem is to speak the right language to them. Imagine you have APIs, and the second example of that send method that I put over there, that would do the job, but that also means that they have to write everything. I'm just offering them the endpoints, and they have to figure out how to do things. But if I go to the developers, if I don't just wait for them to come to me, don't wait for them to come to use your product in your one language or one environment, just go to them. If you have APIs, make sure you create client libraries in every, maybe in every popular language, or your client better. You know what they are using. So if they are web developers, maybe you should consider JavaScript client libraries. If they are mobile developers, maybe you should consider Android and iOS SDKs. Wherever they are, think how you can offer them. Go to them. Be available for them where they are. And speaking the right language is not just about speaking programming languages. It's also speaking the right environment to them. I always use the Microsoft example here because I know this is like a Microsoft conference, so I think all of us are using Microsoft technologies, but whenever I do this talk in other conferences, I say, whether you like Microsoft or not, let's face it, they've been doing an amazing job in the past few years. They're just, oh, you're using Mac? No problem. We have Visual Studio for you. We have a .NET framework for you. You are on Linux? Oh, that's also not a problem. We are there for you. So this is all the cross-platform .NET stuff available in there. That wasn't meant to be in there. The languages as well, C#, Node. Now, the whole Microsoft documentation is in Node.js. Who would thought so? So consider the tools and languages that are relevant to the developers who are using your product. You will win them. And then consider where they will learn about your product. Documentation. Documentation is really, really important. I'm distracted by that Slack now, but right. So, okay, focus. Documentation. Documentation is the first place where anyone would go and try to understand what you're offering. And probably is also the first search result they will get when they are looking for you. So this matters. And documentation, think developers. So make sure it is for developers. Make sure you have guides to explain how things work. We don't want just to, copy code. We want to understand first what's going on. So have guides that explain the whole thing. This is what we do, and this is how we do it. This is your request. Put some nice images there, some nice graphs. We like to see that. We like to see flows. And then, obviously, have your API reference. API references in there, what are the calls, what are the parameters they need, and all of that stuff. And then you can put also tutorials. Tutorials are important because tutorials will show them a more complex scenarios on how to use the product. And building blocks. So building blocks are small samples of code that do just one thing. Let's say in our case, you will have a small building block that is just to send an SMS in the simplest possible way. It's not a very complicated scenario or anything, or to make a phone call. This is really helpful for developers because this encourages them to copy and paste. And I know we can have a whole session talking about copy pasting, Stack Overflow, and developers. There is nothing wrong about that. If they want to use that, if they want to send an SMS, make sure you have the code for them to copy it, to copy paste it, and they send the SMS. So this is also should be there on the documentation. I'm sorry I keep stopping and drinking water, but I just get like super thirsty. And make it structured for them. It's quite nice to go there and to know exactly what they are looking for and where they can find the information they want to know. Reason. Again, I'm just bragging because we did win the documentation. Actually, we did win 3 awards with the API, the docs, for our documentation. Microsoft, again, they did redo their whole documentation to make it, to update it, and to follow all the whole new Microsoft spirit there. Oh, okay. Okay, this is working again. Usually when we talk about documentation, we think about the official documentation, that website where people go. But documentation is not just that. Your README with your projects are really an important part of the documentation. If anyone is going on GitHub, I think the first thing maybe we do, we just read the README to know what's going on in there. And again, maybe we can find a code sample or 2 that we can copy. So have a clear README about what you do, give them few code samples to try, and the configuration, the setup, and what they need. It should all be on that README. Make their life easier. Just tell them that's what you need in order to do anything. You can have great documentation. You can have a very clean, good code, but you still need a way to communicate it with developers, right? So there are 2 kinds of the way you communicate with developers. The first one is how you communicate with them when it comes to your strategy, your roadmap, and what's going on internally. We get a lot of frustration as developers if we don't find that one feature we need, right? We get angry if a bug is not fixed. And this is when communication really matters. Let them know, and be honest. It's okay. Let them know that that bug, oh yeah, you filed something on GitHub, you're right, that is a bug actually, and this is the plan. So do not expect it now. And especially if we are opting for open source, and I hope you do, it is a great responsibility because as an open source maintainer, you will see all kinds of things, and you will have to say no to things. There will be contributions that you will have to say no to them. There will be people asking for things, and you will have to say, no, we are not going to implement that. But don't stop at just saying no. Explain things to them. Because without their feedback, without all these contributions, there is no way for your product to be better. So they are really valuable to you. So make them feel that they are valuable and make them feel that their opinion matters. Even when you have to make that hard decision to say no, explain why. I mean, who's here not frustrated with not having an edit button on Twitter? I am. At least I tweet about that twice a month. And I'm pretty sure like the developers, like from the Twitter team, they know that. It's not like something everyone wants an edit button. And I also know that they probably have a good reason not to have one. But as far as I know, it could be there, but as far as I know, no one ever said, okay, there won't be an edit button, and this is why there won't be an edit button. So I'm still frustrated with not having the edit button. So this is like the first thing. Communicate with them and be honest. Don't like, I'm sure you've been there. You know when someone is not telling the truth, right? So, and the other way is also communicating the change in your code. And this is a way for anyone who is using the product to see exactly what's going on, what's changed, what functionality is in what, in which version. Change logs are important. Have your release notes. This is really important because it is a way to facilitate for them, make things easier for them to use the product and see where things are. So as you can see here, for example, we don't particularly write blog posts about new releases because we make a lot of new releases, but we had to make one here because this is the V3 is the release when we changed completely the configuration. And because we know that people have been struggling with the configuration, so we thought it's important to make big announcements of this to know that things changed for them. The other way of like communication is when developers ask for your help, because they will be. And with everything available these days, it's getting harder for us. Issues on GitHub, questions on Twitter, questions on Stack Overflow, and God knows how many other, forum out there. You can get all kinds of questions because people, when they are stuck, they will ask for help. So we need to be, try as much as possible to be available. It's really hard to keep up with all of this. Like, it's hard for me now. I'm in the conference. It's really hard. I don't know. People may be asking a question now, but I'm not there to answer them. So try to keep up with all of this. Again, because they do matter, and you're creating a product for them. So you really want them to be able to use it. So whenever they have a problem, you need to fix it. And surprisingly, sometimes by fixing their problems, you are actually fixing a problem in the core of the product. That's the way how you can see what's going on with your product. So this is, again, very useful. Feedback, make them feel that their opinions matters, and help them use your product. That's the aim, after all. The other thing that makes developers very happy is to have tools and resources for them available to start and to learn about your product. So my friend Tomomi, she works at Slack. She's got this really good talk about ways of learning for developers, because I think the talk is called "Because We All Learn Differently," something like that. we do all learn differently, right? Who likes who likes to read, like reading maybe books, development books, as a way of learning? All right, so some people like reading. Who likes to watch things, maybe, Pluralsight videos. We have a Pluralsight author here. Okay, so you like that. And who likes to read just just a blog post that fixes the problem for you and that's it? No, right? And what is the other one? Yeah, so we did the listen. Okay, so this is the first way, which is watching stuff. There's Channel 9 is very famous. So make sure, it is a choice, but try to be available everywhere. Again, be where your developers are. So maybe a bit of visual content, some videos on YouTube, or even webinars. Webinars are really good as well. Videos are good for learning, for people to follow. Sometimes hands-on code. Oh, that's the one that I wanted to ask about, the most important one. Who wants to try things to learn? I'm still looking. I'm being judgmental. I want all the hands. Right. So, some people want to just straight away give me something to start with, and I just want to try things and see how it works. So, for example, the Azure, I think this is a new way of learning. I think it's called the Azure Learning, maybe. And the idea is to have courses, and with every course, you are winning points, as you can see, 900 points of the course. So you start and you go gradually, step by step. So this is also a good way for people to learn. And also the fact that you are, in the end of it, winning something, getting a reward, even if that reward means nothing, like the GitHub badges, for example. With GitHub, you get a badge. So it's not like you're getting nice boots or anything, but still, that feeling as a humans, we want that, learning this way. Quick starts. Quick starts also are a great way, because quick starts are just code samples that is almost like you're building a block. So it's code that is simple. It's not complicated projects or anything. It's literally, maybe you choose to have a web project. So as a developer, I'll go to your quick starts and I say, do this, do this, do this. And every time I follow that, and then I go to see the code and I see exactly what is it doing. And I use that very basic code as a template, maybe to learn and to build on top of it. So quick starts are really easy, because if you did work on your documentation, you have the code, or if you have your quick start, you have the code for the documentation. So in a way or another, you're winning something. And the blog posts. Blog posts are an amazing way of learning, and they are also a way of communication, asynchronous way of communication, because when someone asks the question, if you do have enough blog posts to explain things, the chances are, even if I'm not there to answer their questions straight away on GitHub, hopefully they could find a blog post that explain how to do that thing. For example, what we do is, on our blog, we sometimes we can write when people are hacking on something. So it could be anything you decided to work on, and you write it as a blog post. But we also have something called X with Y, which is very simple steps, how to do something with something. For example, how to send an SMS with ASP, or maybe how to make a phone call with Python, writing Python, stuff like that. So it's really basic, but it's out there for people to learn from it, and also to use it when they are stuck. And the other way I also like is, face-to-face contact, face-to-face communication. Hackathons are really a great way to test your product, because in hackathons people are hacking. It's very quick, so you can see how easy it is to start. Would it take them a long time? And then you never know what kind of scenarios they can come up with. I particularly like the student hackathons. They're amazing, because you never know. They're just like a bunch of students, and then they want to do this thing, and you're like, oh, we never thought about that. Let me write down this, because this is important. We can add this. So hackathons are a great way to get feedback on the product and where you are, and also to get ideas on potentially new features to add. And conferences, obviously. You go to conferences, you talk to people. Sometimes you don't have to talk about your product like in a very direct way. Sometimes it's just, networking with people and see what everyone is doing and learning from each other. Sometimes it's a whole talk about how to do things with my product. I'm sure you've seen a lot of talks on how to do things with Microsoft products, right? And another thing that I think make developers happy is innovation. I'm very aware that in our day-to-day jobs, we don't always work on like cutting-edge technologies, or we are not writing, flying robots to do whatever. Everyone needs to pay the rent and the mortgage, so sometimes we are just working on things much simpler. But also we like to follow trends, right? I guess you are here in the conference to see what's going on and what's going to happen in the future. I don't know, have you seen that tweet that says how to stay relevant in the next 10 years? That backfired badly on that guy. But we want to stay relevant, and sometimes a bit of innovation is good. What you want is to find ways to stay relevant. There is a lot of AI happening these days. Apparently, the future is going to be conversational AIs and bots and stuff like that. Do you have what you're working on? Do you have the capabilities to stay with these trends and be part of it, be part of the future? It's always nice to show people how to send an SMS, because they could be working maybe on a solution to send notification. But also it's really nice to show them that they can have an integration with IBM Watson or Alexa and get a phone call, get some voice, and do other stuff with it. So that's what would attract them, at least to try outside of their day job. So try to stay relevant and try to be innovative and do cool things. Cool things are nice. Maybe not having Raspberry Pi and a camera that starts talking in the room, because that's creepy, but that's also fun. Right. And the last one I want to talk about, it's this one. We talk a lot about empathy, inclusion, and diversity in tech these days, but we also think about all of that as a separate thing from the technical stuff. We always separate them, We have the soft things, and then we have the technical things. It shouldn't be this way. If you are thinking about developers, if you are thinking about your user and they want them to if you want to simplify things for them, you are being empathetic to them. You should be empathetic in every technical decision you are making, actually. Not just to be a nice and kind human being. But think about it in every technical decision you're making. Think about your users. and how this decision would be important to them and how would it impact them. Be honest. Be honest in your communication with them. I know sometimes we don't tell what's going on internally because that's how business work, but sometimes also you need to be honest with them. When you don't get things right, it's okay, just say, we failed, this is not right, but I'm gonna make it right for you. Or, I feel you, I know your pain, I know this is painful, and I am working on it. This is really important. And be authentic to yourself. This is all the way in the way you create your technology, in the way you communicate with others, in the way you write your documentation. Always be authentic and have your own identity, because there is a lot out there, but just have your own voice. And I am done 9 minutes early. Oopsie. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you next year. Happy conference. I hope you had a good time in the conference. And I don't know if we still have 9 minutes, so we still can be here. Do you have any comments on this? Do you have your own experiences? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Don't be shy. Thank you.
Okay, hey, I got the mic now and I forgot what I was supposed to ask.
Sorry.
But I think it was about this thing with blog posts and reading blog posts as a way to get information on how to solve something. And sometimes I feel I'm very cautious about it because sometimes I don't know if this is a valid blog post or not. It's documentation. Going to documentation is one thing. Looking at a plural site or whatever it might be, then I know it's legit. But even sometimes, it's like what you said about when you're doing documentation and you want to have a very minimalistic case where you just can isolate that. This is how to do it. If you go to a blog post on Stack Overflow, most things are great. I mean, so nothing against Stack Overflow, it's great. But sometimes there's stuff in there, if you just go with it and you think it will solve your problem, it will, as they say, shoot you in the foot. And you don't know what hit you. What's your comment on that?
Very true. Well, I guess we need to filter. In the same way, if I am traveling somewhere and I need to book a hotel, I will go see the reviews. Well, we now do all reviews, whether it's a restaurant, a hotel, or even a movie, actually. We need to see what is the best thing. But it's never a guaranteed thing. Someone a restaurant could have a very good reviews, but you go there and you don't like it, or you go there and that day wasn't a good day. So hopefully we try to filter and know your sources, who to read to, what blog posts to go to. Yeah, but there is no definite answer here. Sometimes, we shoot on the foot. Yeah, it's like...
You mentioned many ways how to communicate with developers, but it's all kind of labor intensive to write the blogs, to create the due documentation. So who does this? Is this developer in your company, or you have kind of specialized department to actually cover these functions?
Oh, so in our case, it's the developer advocates. So that's what we do. And I think it depends on the organization, but now everyone, so for example, Microsoft, they have a whole entity, the documentation team, and they have the developer advocates who focus more on demos and talks, conferences, stuff like that. So it's not the developers, it's not the engineers, although they could participate in this, and I guess it depends on the size of the company. If it's a smaller company and you don't have resources dedicated to that, probably the engineering team will have to do that, but ideally you'll have people dedicated to that.
And can I ask what is the ratio, right, for, I don't know, for how many developers you have compared to the developer advocates?
I don't think it's a ratio. I don't think they decide this is how many developers I have, so this is how many developer advocates I should have. It is more, this is my product, and this is where I need people to be. So this is how much advocates I should have, maybe. For example, in my company, in my team, most of us are like specialized by language. So you have like the .NET developer advocate, someone who takes care of Java, because we are the maintainers of the client library. So we have like a Python person. Actually, we do have a few people who are Python people. We have Python. We do have maybe 2 people doing PHP. So it's more to do with the product than the number of the engineers you have on the team.
Basically, I wanted to ask or say something similar. It's we are a small company, and I can feel this same problem because it's so much work. It's a lot of work to develop something as a first thing, and then document it well. That not from the factual point of view, but from the point of view that someone actually understands it or can work with that documentation. And communicating is the whole other story. It's about the updates that can be automated a little bit. For example, that's what we did, the release notes and so on. So we don't have to write it every release, which can be once a day or multiple times a week or something like that. But then talking to the developers, sending Twitter, whatever, going to meetups, talking like what you do, which is really great. But it's a lot of work, and I think every company either has a very social developer who can do this as well as coding, but most probably it's some other person.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
The thing is, I feel like you need it. If your product is APIs, for example, you really need to do that. Otherwise, how are you gonna reach out to developers, or how are they gonna use them? I do understand, like the documentation is a whole project in itself, because you need someone to develop the portal, and it's not just like a one-page website. You need like mechanism to add documentation. How are we going to contribute to that? So our documentation is open source. People can go and contribute to it. How do you want to make that automated and easy to do for people? How are you going to maintain that for whatever number of information you have? In the same way, yes, how are you going to socialize? So my job, for example, I move it to this role, so I don't have to worry about taking time off. If I want to go to a conference, I don't have to be on holiday because it is my job. It depends on the size of the company. I know companies that they only have one developer advocate, so they start with one person, or it would be an engineer, but slowly moves to this role more. They would be like still working on the product, but doing lots maybe of public speaking, and they would slowly disappear to that community kind of to be the face in the community. So, yeah. Yes. So by internal documentation, you mean the development team? I'm not sure how to answer this question because I never worked on the API, so I don't really know what's going on with the product team. But I believe we are having like trying to have a very open approach and standard everything. So it should be very similar to this. No, it's a choice. For example, we made the choice to have a community Slack. So it's a Slack channel that everyone can join. Not every company has that, but it is a choice. Oh, we're going to have a Slack where people can talk. Sometimes it gets really, it gets complicated because we had people asking the same question on Stack Overflow, on GitHub, and on Slack. And you don't know where to answer or where to keep up with the conversation. So it has to be just a decision. I like in the talk, I obviously wanted to show everything, but in the end of the day, just make the decision and see what's better for you.
At the beginning of your talk, you mentioned kind of how it's important to have good API and kind of API which is kind of easy to use. So how do you achieve this across the company? I assume you have several teams generating API. How do you keep them consistent? How do you keep them with the same look and feel? And who designed those? Is it a developer advocate or is it developer who kind of designing the API?
So the APIs, we do contribute. So that's what I said by we are the bridge between developers and the product team. So we do contribute to the design of the APIs. So with the product team, we all work on that together. When it comes to the client libraries, we own that, so it's our decision to work on that. We try to keep things, to have conventions and to have standards, but then you have the differences between the languages, and that's when you need to to follow idioms and conventions in the language, because, between Ruby and C#, things are different. So we need just to follow what's in the language.
One more question. You said that your customers actually are able to contribute to your documentation.
Yeah, if you
and
go.
So do they?
Yes, we do have people, contributing, and we took part of the Hacktoberfest, and most of the contributions were on the documentation because it's easier. Yeah. You change the typo or you change a word and you're like, I did a contribution, give me a T-shirt. But yeah, no, people do contribute.
Okay.
It's still a contribution, so they still did some effort. They deserve their T-shirt.
I understand.
I have something flashing in red, but I don't think anyone is going to kick us out. But I'll be around anyway, so if anyone else have anything to say. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you too.